Well, we are at this point. I'm looking down at Ambassador uh, Bob Ray. So we've now got to the stage where we are going to be looking at our keynote speaker. And so before you come up, I'm going to say, just give me a couple of minutes. I'm going to try and shorten all of the amazing um, things that you have done, and I'm going to try and truncate it. You can see it in your program all fully laid out. But our keynote speaker is Ambassador Bob Ray, who is the ambassador and permanent representative of Canada to the United Nations. Mr. Ray has served as Premier of Ontario from 1990 to 1995 and interim leader of the Liberal Party of Canada from 2011 to 2013. Now, he was elected to federal and provincial parliaments 11 times between 1978 and 2013. And named, I'm going to say, as Queen's Counsel back in 1984. So a fellow member of the profession. So I'm pleased, very pleased to welcome you. An accomplished author of 5 books and a teacher of law and public policy at the University of Toronto. Now, as a senior counsel, you have set up your own law firm, OKT LLP, specializing in Indigenous law and constitutional issues. And Mr. Ray is a fellow of the Forum of Federations, an organization he co-founded in the 1990s, Massey College, and the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights. He has served as the chief negotiator for the 9 First Nations that are members of the Matwa Tribal Council in Northern Ontario between 2013 and 2018. And in October of 2017, Mr. Ray was appointed as Canada's special envoy to Myanmar. So as a Privy Councillor and a companion of the Order of Canada and a member of the Order of Ontario, he has numerous awards and honorary degrees from institutions in Canada and around the world. So I hope I have done you justice, Ambassador Ray. And I would now invite you as our keynote speaker to address our symposium. Thank you so much. Can we give Ambassador Ray a warm welcome? I'm going to swap places with this.
Okay.
I'm going to swap places.
Oh.
There you go.
Thank you so much. It's good morning. This is I can only imagine, as somebody who's perhaps not expecting to speak, this is a long process of remarks and introductions and congratulations and everything else. And I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to join you in person today. The reason that I'm here, of course, is Rhonda, who has promised me that I'll be able to come back to Victoria University and teach next year. And one of my first duties was to give the keynote address to this conference. And it was a very hard sell because she said it's in Trinidad and it's in February. And I said, so what? Like, why wouldn't a Canadian come here? And to leave the balmy climate of Canada in February to face the harsh winter weather of Trinidad, although a bit of rain today, but look, the rain is warm. You feel it on your hands. These are not ice pellets that are falling. But there are sacrifices that we all have to make for the common good. So I'm delighted to be able to join you today. Now, when I accepted the invitation to join the conference, I was the ambassador to the UN. I'm now semi-unemployed and undertaking my, I think about 12th change of life and career. So Um, but the situation facing the Caribbean, with which I was familiar in a variety of ways, I'd been co-chair of a committee on development, financing for development at the UN, together with the ambassador from Jamaica, who's became a great friend. I spent a great deal of time with the Prime Minister of Barbados talking about her initiatives with respect to financing for development, the changes that needed to be made. I became, as a result of my job, I became the chair of the advisory committee on Haiti, which I'll be talking a little bit about, which is an ongoing established group of countries, of which Canada is always the chair, to look at what's happening in Haiti, what more we can do. So I really felt that I might have something to contribute to some of the discussion, but the conditions and the issues were serious and difficult and challenging. But in light of the continuing deterioration of the situation in Haiti, the ongoing impacts of climate change, with the really very serious and devastating hurricane affecting particularly the island of Jamaica, and not just that, but also the spreading of dangerous ideas about the planetary crisis and climate change being a hoax, the latest renewal of the Monroe Doctrine with its Trump corollary. It's no exaggeration to say that we've gone now from something that's serious to something that's actually existential. And as a Canadian, I can say it's not just existential for all of you, for the Caribbean, for every country in the world, but it's existential for Canada. We had always assumed, like you, that there would be a certain kind of American leadership with which we could deal, that it would be something relatively predictable, that there would be aid programs and other programs being developed. And I know I don't want to put High Commissioner Callan on the spot. Now that I'm a free agent, I'm extremely dangerous. For my nickname in the department where I worked for 7 years was to be called Hurricane Bob. Like, look out, you don't know what's coming. It can be dramatic. But my interest in the Caribbean actually goes back a long, long way, because when I was a student of economic history, I'm sorry that Sir Hilary's not here to hear me talk a little bit about economic history. He can judge whether I learned anything from that. I was very affected by a number of books, but one of them that really affected me very much was the great classic written by Eric Williams, somebody who will be known to everyone in this room. And that book, of course, is called Capitalism and Slavery, which was published in 1944. And when it was published, it was condemned, it was criticized, it was praised, it was a powerful, powerful expression of something that has now been confirmed by all of the research and all of the data that we've collected over the last 80 years since Sir Eric's book was published. And that is the simple fact that the wealth of the hegemon at the time, the wealth of Europe, the wealth of the United Kingdom, was a direct byproduct of the slave trade. That it wasn't as if these two things were unconnected. It wasn't as if the great houses of England that were being built in the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries, that wealth came from nowhere. No, it came from the Caribbean. It came from the trade that had been created and that was made so profitable by the fact that people were not paid, people were slaves. People were turned into financial objects rather than being allowed to be free agents. And another great book that's just come out in the last few years by a British historian named William Dalrymple, called The Anarchy, which is about the East India Company, also shows that it's not just slavery that allowed for the creation of this wealth. It was also indenture. So Trinidad, which has been affected both by policies of slavery and also by policies of indenture, is a dramatic case in point of why many of the issues that are being discussed, and was so interested to hear Sir Hilary talking again about reparations, to hear decolonization once again being put on the table. What do these concepts mean? How do we put them in place? I think it's a very important opportunity for us to share these ideas. And as a Canadian, as the High Commissioner has already said, much of our development is connected with this as well. We also have to come to terms not only with our own past, with our own history of plunder, with the attempted genocide of indigenous populations, the extraction of wealth from fish, from fur, from timber, we've already mentioned. So we have to recognize the roots of the inequality that is something we have as a country and something that the Caribbean shares. The notion that there's no similarity or no connection between our common history is not true. We are all the children of empire. We are all the children of empire. And I must say, when I went to the United Nations as the ambassador, as soon as you sit in that General Assembly and listen to what people have to say, and I spent the first period of my time, people say, "What are you doing at the UN?" I said, "I'm listening. I'm just listening to the dialogue. I'm listening to what people are saying. I'm listening to the grievances that are being expressed." And they are all grievances which flow from the experience of empire. Empire is the central fact of life that we are dealing with and having to continue to contend with. So, as has been said, and I want to just repeat it, the word security can mean many different things. While the word has been hijacked by those who only want to talk about the military side of things, that's really not a full description of what security and insecurity is all about. We know from the hierarchy of needs, it's well known to all of us, that the need for security starts from birth. It's foundational. It's fundamental to the development of the human personality from the time of birth. And even the act of birth itself can be an area of relative certainty or an area of complete uncertainty. We know from the dramatic differences in maternal health and in survival that it is fundamental as to whether or not those kinds of conditions of security have been created or not. We need to understand that children have to be fed, have to be loved, have to be housed, have to be educated, have to be valued, and have to be shown the full dignity that nurtures personal as well as social and economic growth. All of these things are essential to what we must see as the architecture of security. Some of it is personal, some of it is based on the family, some of it is based on the community, some of it is based on the broader nation, and some of it is based on the community of nations. And so this sense of the architecture of security is absolutely essential for us to understand where our interventions happen and where we need to do things together. I've heard a lot today about the need for action. One of the most wonderful briefings I ever received was from a British officer in Afghanistan, and he was talking about strategy. And he looked at me and he said, "Sir, I hope you understand that strategy without resources is better called hallucination. We can all create castles in the air, right? We can all build these castles, and they don't mean a thing." I hate to say this in the presence of so many academics, but they don't mean a thing unless we do something with the information, unless we connect the theory and the practice. They have to go together. We can't just rely on one and not the other. So to look at Haiti for a moment, we need to understand that there's been a transformation in the way the world in the region looks at Haiti. For a long time, Haiti was seen as having, "Oh, it's Haiti. It's their problem. We're not like that. That's not us. That's them." But increasingly, I think the things that we can see happening in Haiti, where the growth of violence has become such, and the work of gangs has become such, that we can no longer simply consider it to be a set of problems that relate only to the western part of the island of Hispaniola. No, it's a regional problem. The gangs are not limited to Haiti. The gangs are getting their guns from somewhere, principally from the United States. Because guess what? Because the United States doesn't believe in gun control domestically, they don't believe in gun control internationally either. So you have guns that are coming from the United States to Mexico to the entire region of the Caribbean. And that is the arms trade. That means that the criminal elements in all of our societies are stronger and better equipped than the police, and in many cases, better equipped than the military. So the structure of these gangs, but also the destruction that has taken place, is so dramatic. In Haiti today, there are 1.4 million people in a population of 14 million who have been displaced, who are homeless, who have no shelters, no place to go, and who are living on the street and in make-do places where they can stay, which I've had the opportunity to visit. And it is really tough to see the circumstances in which people are having to live because of the power of these gangs and the weakness of the state. We need stronger states. We need states that are capable of responding to the risks and the dangers that are facing their populations. And we don't create stronger states by bypassing them, by saying, oh, we'll solve that problem. We'll come in from the outside and we'll fix it. Haiti's had 4 major interventions in the last 30 years, and it's in worse shape today than it ever has been. So we have to think through these strategies again, strengthen the state, build up the capacity of the state. But it's not enough to just focus on the kinetic military responses to gangs. You have to deal with the conditions that create gangs. The membership, more than half the membership of the gangs in Haiti is made up of kids. Kids, I say that, children. They're not, people say we're going to get rid of the gangs. You say, so who exactly are you going to, quote, get rid of? Are you going to provide jobs? Are you going to provide education? Are you going to provide a structure that will provide them with security? Simply putting military boots on the ground, although it is now a critical part of what needs to be done, is not the whole thing. It can't be the whole thing. It has to be based on a broader strategy. I think what the High Commissioner was saying earlier is extremely important. I want to just emphasize it. While the journey in the Caribbean from colony to nation has been a driving theme, let's also remember that it was those leaders who so inspired so many people around the world were also talking about social and economic transformation, not just political transformation. And I'm not going to get into the internal controversies of, the Federation of the West Indies and all this stuff, and how regional ideas, didn't take hold at the beginning, because I think essentially they were seen as sort of something that was imposed from the outside. But let me, again, as an outsider, not imposing, but just suggesting, is to say that the sinews of cooperation and regional engagement have to grow and deepen. They have to grow and deepen because an island state of 50,000 or 100,000 or 150,000 is simply not big enough to get the attention of the agencies who need to be engaged. I had a conversation with a very large, successful central banker some years ago, and I was telling him how the Caribbean needed to have an investment plan on energy that it will allow for the replacement of fossil fuel no more reliance on diesel fuel, moving to solar and moving to wind and moving to renewable energy, how it was very doable. And the Caribbean could actually be an incredibly significant case example of how this transformation can take place. And he said to me, great idea. I said, well, what's the problem? He says, well, we can't do 40 different transactions. It's too expensive. The transaction costs are too high. The amount of time and attention we have to spend to get these deals done, it won't work. We need a central coordination of this effort on the part of Caribbean countries that will allow this to happen. That's just one example. Whether it's currency, whether it's how people collect together, how things move forward. Again, not trying to impose an idea, just to say some of these things have to be done collectively. It won't work if it isn't done collectively. Now, I come from a federation. I know federations are not easy. We have a constant challenge, but believe me, it's better than that. Having that level of cooperation, sometimes as difficult as it is essential for us to be able to move forward. I think this notion of greater cooperation and greater integration of effort has to be matched from the outside. So let me make it clear. I'm not one of those who's saying, you're going to have to figure out how to do it yourselves because you're not going to get any help from anybody else. Not at all. That's not right. And that's not the position of Canada, as the High Commissioner has made it very clear. But it needs to be met not only by what we do as outside countries to help make a difference, but that has to be led by the Caribbean countries themselves. It can't be imposed from the outside. It has to be led by the Caribbean countries themselves, but it also has to be assisted with resources from the outside. Now, why is that the moral and right thing to do? Well, one of the reasons is because the Caribbean has been plundered for several hundred years by imperial powers that have done very well out of this situation. And that's not rhetoric. Well, it is rhetoric, but it's good rhetoric. It's true rhetoric. And so there has to be some concept of our obligation as advanced economies to say, yes, this happened. Now, let me also say that we in Canada have gone through this process we call truth and reconciliation. The entrance to Victoria College, which is where Rhonda's from and where, God willing, I will be allowed to go back and this lecture is sort of a trial. Actually, if she doesn't like it, I've got no prospects. But it says the truth will set you free. And there's a wonderful judge who just passed away who wrote a report on Canada's Indigenous peoples on the process of truth and reconciliation. And he said, it is true. The truth will set you free. But first, it will really piss you off. And so the process of finding truth is not easy, but we have to find the truth. Now, we've done it domestically in Canada. King Charles, God bless him, when he was Prince Charles, King Charles himself said, as soon as he could be shown, this is where the slave trade money went. This is what it went to. This is the land that was purchased with what the profits brought it, and this is what you're left. He said, okay, now I understand. Now I know what I have to do. I have to do it. So he did it as an individual. But the point is, nations have to go through this process as well. You are not asking for a handout. You are asking for what you are owed. And that is the concept that has to be understood. We're going through a time now, which is what makes this all so challenging for all of us, is a time in which two important truths are being denied. Well, there's a third truth that's being denied, and that is that there is such a thing as truth. When you go, a lot of talk about the AI today, and many people mentioning it. There is so much disinformation and propaganda that is false, lies on every method of social media, every method of communication, that it is intentionally creating a sense in people that there is no truth. And don't trust anybody, don't trust anything. And therefore, what's the point of voting? And what's the point of participating? What's the point of doing anything? This whole frame of confusion and chaos that's now our systems of social media is being intentionally created so that people can go on manipulating other people. But there's two other particular things that I want to talk about in as I come to the close. The first denial of truth is to believe that international laws, international cooperation, and international institutions themselves are all a part of some kind of conspiracy that's intended to weaken nation states, and in particular to weaken the power and authority of those nation states that my prime minister in his Davos speech has called hegemons. Most of us don't know the difference between a hegemon and a Pokemon, but hegemon is a big power. And hegemony is when big powers are able to create domination. The fact of the matter is that over many generations, not just in the last 80 years, but over many years, we have slowly but surely been creating institutions which actually strengthen nation states and actually make things more productive in the relationships that we have. And in particular, it's reinforced the idea that I've been trying to sort of stay through this piece, which is that economic and social improvements are equally important in the attainment of a decent life and actually the achievement of an effective political sovereignty. Now, none of the institutions that we've created more recently, the World Bank, the IMF, the UN, and all of its agencies, regional development banks, all the organizations that facilitate trade, health, and human rights, none of them are perfect. And all of them can be improved and need to be reformed. Yes, the world development system is in desperate need of reform and improvement. But without them, we're back to the world of what Thomas Hobbes used to call the war of all against all, and the world of might makes right. And this is really what I would call a new kind of imperialism, which every thoughtful person should reject and resist. The second major denial of truth has to do with the survival of planetary health and well-being. We've seen this throughout, through dealing with climate change and the impact of climate change. And we're also seeing it with respect to the recent experiences that we've had with pandemics. Even to the point now where vaccine denial and the refusal to accept basic lessons of public health, which have been foundational to the improvement of the health of the overall population. And now we're living in a world where the United States is pulling out of the World Health Organization, and where you're not even allowed to talk about vaccines, and even research on mRNA, which was the breakthrough that allowed for the creation of a very effective vaccination against COVID to reduce the damaging effect which COVID could have. Overlooked simple fact. You know what? Viruses and bacteria actually don't know anything about borders. We could put up the biggest walls we wanted, and we wouldn't be able to stop a virus. We could have as many border guards as you want. You wouldn't be able to stop a virus or a bacteria. They're part of the human challenge that we face as human beings because of our human vulnerability and a humanity that is shared to something that has caused enormous destruction to human life since people started walking around the globe. And what COVID taught us is that while we might like to think, and I actually wrote a song with this title, we're all in the same boat, actually we're not all in the same boat. We're in different boats. Some boats are big, They're very strong, they're powerful, they can withstand anything. And other boats are dinghies and they're life rafts. And the only thing we have in common actually is the weather. It's the air. It's the what's around us. That's common. But how we deal with that is actually depends on how we distribute wealth, how we help people to resist, and how we make that happen. And that's also true of climate change. We know that climate change is real. We know that it's happening. We know that it's creating more disastrous weather patterns. We also know that there are two things that need to happen at the same time. Those countries that are producing emissions need to reduce emissions. Good news is one big country is actually reducing emissions. It's called China. And they are actually doing this change, this thing. Remember when during COVID we used to talk about bending the arc? How can we bend the arc so it goes down? Well, we're actually bending the arc on emissions in some countries. The Europeans have been doing emission reduction for quite a long time. China has now joined them. One country is just left. It's just gone off, wandering off on their own. And they're saying emissions are not a problem. We want to have coal-fired electric bicycles. I don't know. I mean, they want coal to be burning everywhere, all over the place, even though we know it's the worst source of emissions. And this kind of rejection of science and rejection of knowledge and rejection of what we know is good policy is not only hurting this generation, but it's hurting future generations. And it was a great British conservative, Edmund Burke, who said, life is a contract between those who have gone before, those who are living, and those who are yet to be born. In the Indigenous framework in Canada, we talk about 7 generations. 7 generations thinking. What were people doing 7 generations ago? What will they be doing 7 generations from now? How does that impact how we make policy today? Again, these are global issues. They don't, remember, some of you are old enough to remember, it used to be, and I say this to my kids, they can't believe it's true, it used to be that there was a smoking section on an airplane. Now, how dumb is that? Like, can you imagine thinking, seriously, you're going to, oh, it's over there now. There is no such thing as a smoking section in an airplane. The whole airplane is infected. And that's what we're doing. That's the perspective that we've lost. The planet is not unlimited. We are producing more than we're able to, unlimited production of emissions is nuts. It's crazy. Because we know we're basically poisoning the planet. And we're poisoning it for future generations. That's the truth. The second part of policy is equally critical. Not all countries are equally able to resist the impacts of disastrous climatic events. And again, let's go back to our stories of our youth. If you build a house with sticks, it gets blown down. If you build a house that's stronger, it doesn't get blown down. And the evidence of that is overwhelming. In Bangladesh, for example, it used to be that when the cyclones came in from the coast, hundreds of thousands of people would die because Bangladesh is right on the water plane. There's no mountains. It's just flat. And when those cyclones go through, they can knock everything down. And so Bangladesh said, well, we have to create an early warning system. We have to build up our weather stations. We have to build up our ability to predict what it will be. And we have to create shelters where we can put out a blast and say, everybody get to the shelter. And they built thousands and thousands of these shelters across the country. And they have now managed to reduce dramatically, not the hurricanes, because they can't do that, but the loss of life. And that we know that's what's needed. It's called resilience, and it's called adaptation. How do we create the resilience and adaptation that will allow countries to survive the impact of more and more severe weather? We know that weather is happening. We know it's coming. We know it will not suddenly stop. But what we do know is that we can help countries to create the means to respond and save their populations. It's quite simple. You plan, you build, you spend a lot of money, but you save a lot of money. And most importantly, you save life. This is a natural conversation that we need to have. Canada and the Caribbean. How can we help build this resilience? And knowing that resilience is something that affects us as well. The island of Prince Edward Island, the province of Prince Edward Island, lost a whole chunk of the eastern coast in one fell swoop. And suddenly, Canadian policy on adaptation improved because, and I kept on saying to the government when I was Hurricane Bob, I said, look, you need to understand what we have discovered at home is the truth for all the countries around the world. So don't just talk about emissions from countries that are not producing emissions. Let's talk about how we can help countries to adapt and deal with the impact. So the last thing I want to say, my wife's starting to give me this signal, is that no matter what the question in public policy is, no matter what it is, nationally, locally, globally, internationally, every answer has a component that involves education. Education is the one thing that is an economic, social, personal, psychological part of what you need to do, what any country needs to do, and what we all need to do. So the more we can insist on science, knowledge, learning at every single level of society, preschool, school, whatever, every possible one, higher education, advanced learning, whatever it is, it's part of the answer. And that's the meaning of education. Education is the one thing that provides for personal transformation, and we all know this. It provides for our own personal, individual expansion of our own awareness, consciousness, knowledge, and sense of security. And at the same time, it's a powerful economic investment. It can be transformative for populations. And that's why what we're doing here these next 2 days, and what we're going to continue to be doing over this next while, is so critically important. So I finished. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be with you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Thank you, Ambassador Ray. I think President of Victoria University, I think he has passed the test. Yes. I really would like to thank you on behalf of the CCI for that very reflective and inspiring delivery as a keynote for this morning's opening. And with that in mind, I think you have laid a call for action, but for as academics and practitioners to stand in ways that are meaningful and tangible for change. And so before we close with our vote of thanks, let me bring before us to perform a song, a meaningful one, a call for us to stand up by one of our past students of the Department of Behavioral Sciences, Miss Kendra Hope.